The police is a service that reflects society, and when I last looked, women are a big part of society.
If you just have a police force full of, white heterosexual males, they're going to police with a certain sort of attitude. And as a consequence of that, there are vast swathes of the community that don't get policed in the way that they deserve.
When we sold the police service as a career, in a 30-year career, women were coming in with an expectation that they could have a family and continue through the ranks in a part-time and flexible working posts.
What we're seeing now is a number of officers who have for a long time had part-time working hours that have been suitable for the service, having those reviewed and being told that they no longer are.
Having all our flexible hours looked at, and there's quite a lot of uncertainty as to whether those roles are going to be viable in the future.
That is putting a lot of stress onto some female officers when they're having to change their hours because the organisation wants them to.
Females generally tend to be the main carer for children, so have to take on board all of the organisation and the juggling of everything with childcare, and it's very difficult, it's becoming increasingly difficult to be a police officer and be female.
Sometimes nurseries need 6 months' notice for changes, and the service is working on a 1 month turnaround, and those 5 months leave an officer extremely stressed.
Particularly single parents who haven't got that family support to look after their children in the evening or over the night.
And in those environments, that's when lots of things start to go wrong. The relationships can have problems, financial difficulties, and then they're not performing at their best at work.
There's less of us who are able to cover for one another if we need a day off or if we want to take annual leave with our family.
Quite a few are having to either drop down their hours even further, and some are telling us that they are seriously considering now as to whether they're going to have a career in the service at all.
I've got 5 children, work full time as a police constable in Nuneaton. My husband is also a police constable in Rugby. And the effects of Windsor when they come into us will be double-fold, because if you look at the £4,000 per officer that's going to leave, that's actually £8,000 coming out of our household.
The Windsor recommendations are not providing any sort of equality for women. Women in West Midlands Police, of which there's been a significant recruitment over the last 10 years.
We've had an increase in women into the service of a childbearing age. This is something that should have been looked at ages ago, and we mentioned this a few years ago, that there's going to be a baby boom and therefore we need to be looking at where you could put women in the future. This is going to have a knock-on effect between the ranks, and already we've seen that there's been a ceiling, particularly for women going through the ranks at sergeant and inspector level. If they don't get this right, it's going to put women off from getting promoted in the first instance to go to the sergeant rank, and obviously those numbers will fall, which then reduces the amount of women who can go forward into the inspecting ranks. So it's going to have a knock-on effect, and one of the key priorities is to get as many women as they can higher up the rank structure in the key decision-making areas to make the police service more diverse. People are being forced out of the various roles because they cannot accommodate them.
The organisation says we'll do the same with less, which means there's less flexibility for those of us who are left behind. And I'm scared that that will unwittingly lead to people exiting the organisation prematurely.
I've been in the job now for 11 years, so I'm looking that I should really have another 19 odd years to go. And when I add up the pros with regards to that, I'm not actually sure whether policing is something that I can continue on for 19 years. Because it's got to be something that I can still progress through the career and be able to afford to do.
When I was on the shift, it was 1 or 2 of us. It's nice to see now that we're nearly 50%, and that's true representation, isn't it?
Having all the work to balance the workforce with gender, for it all to slide away because we've got no flexibility now, I think it's quite criminal, really.
The big plea to this government in particular is think about some of the proposals that you're implementing with these cuts and the negative impact this is going to have on women in the future of the British Police Service.